All right, here we go. Houston Rockets, Minnesota Timberwolves, Denver Nuggets, Atlanta Hawks, 4-team trade, 12 players. The headliner being Robert Covington heading to the Houston Rockets, Clint Capella to the Atlanta Hawks, and Minnesota, what you doing? Minnesota, what you doing? First thing I want to do is I want to address Robert Covington. It seems like the internet, the fans, even teams, everybody like values Robert Covington. He's the perfect 3-and-D wing, 6'8", good locker room guy. But, as I think about it, is the strange thing is, like, why does he keep getting traded, right? Why does he keep getting traded? If he's such a value and he's such a winning player, why does he keep getting moved? The second thing you have to ask yourself is, Minnesota is doing all of this, we assume, to eventually acquire D'Angelo Russell. The Warriors, myself included, the fans, we all thought like, okay, Robert Covington would definitely be a part of that deal. On paper, he fits exactly the Warriors roster. Well, they weren't interested in Robert Covington. And it leads me to believe that teams are more concerned with his longevity than maybe we've heard. He had off-season knee surgery. He's going to be 30 years old. And, he's not a pillar of health. And there may be some stuff behind the scenes that, we're not aware of because, it's why does he keep getting traded? That's the bottom line. Now, Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, he just is going to dig his feet in and do what he does. And I kind of applaud him for it. It's like you can't go the other way at this point. So he trades the one true center on his roster, or the two centers on his roster. And Nene was involved in this as well. And he's going to go all in on small ball. And, everybody's making a lot of comments about PJ Tucker playing the center position at 6'5". Well, he plays the center position a lot anyway. And I think that Robert Covington is going to have some 6-7 3-point nights for the Rockets, and people are going to kind of raise their brow and say how much this has helped the Rockets. But don't think for a second that Anthony Davis, Jokic, Gobert, hell, even Valanciunas, all these centers on these Western Conference playoff teams, the boys in Portland, right? They're licking their chops at this Houston Rockets roster now and thinking, all right, I'm about to eat. Can Houston run these teams off the floor? I don't know, man. I don't know. And I think the one variable is they have opened up some salary cap. Can they go get a Dwayne Dedmon or a big body at least to fill in and take 5 fouls? And, because there's going to be some problems, man. There's going to be some problems. Ultimately, here's what I see happening with the Houston Rockets. They'll get eliminated in the playoffs, whether that be first, second round. It'll be ugly like they usually do. And what you're going to see is Daryl Morey is going to be out. D'Antoni's going to be out. And Fertitta is going to sell to the fan base. He's going to get a coach with a name, right? And they're going to sell a system change. All you're going to hear off season is about James Harden and how he's going to play the right way off the ball. And it's going to be a different system. And that's how they're going to sell it to the NBA and to their fan base of why, look, we have the talent. It just wasn't being utilized right. I think we're going to see something very similar to that in Philadelphia over the off season. Now, as far as the Atlanta Hawks go, it makes sense, right? Clint Capella, a perfect role man for Trae Young. He already has John Collins. And, I'm not as high as some are as far as Clint Capella goes as a rim protector. I don't look at the numbers. And yes, he is capable at times, but he just lacks physicality and he lacks the presence. Part of being a rim protector is the intimidation factor. And I just don't see that from Clint Capella. But what he does bring to the table is he moves well laterally, right? He doesn't get abused in pick and rolls. He is able to switch. And that means maybe even more than rim protection at this point in the NBA. And then what stands out, his elite trait is his hands. He catches everything in the paint, soft hands, soft touch, good footwork. And so he's going to probably get 8 to 10 points a night just off Trae Young's dimes. And so that makes sense for Atlanta. They give up a draft pick. They get off of Evan Turner. I don't say get off. Evan Turner was an expiring, so I guess it maybe had some value. But you think about their draft picks, I don't think mean as much to them as they would to another team because they're so young. You can't have a complete team of 20-year-olds. You have to mix in some vets. Now, Capella's relatively young as well, but he has quite a bit of playoff experience. Let's move over to Minnesota because I think what Minnesota has done here is they've put even more pressure on themselves to acquire D'Angelo Russell. They've really backed themselves into a corner because if you've been reading all the reports, Robert Covington was Karl Anthony Towns' best friend on the team. So now you move the one guy that Cat is kind of, I won't say the one guy, but the closest guy to Cat, and the whole move is to make him happy, and you still don't return D'Angelo Russell. And so here's the thing with the draft, the first round pick they got from Brooklyn, it's lottery protected. So take it for what it's worth. It feels like most of these teams aren't valuing the 2020 draft picks. That suggests they don't like this crop of prospects, but you don't know until you know, right? That's one thing. If you've been following the NBA long enough, there's not a consensus number one guy, but you really don't know how these drafts pan out for 2 or 3 years. But I guess the variable that's been thrown into the mix for Minnesota is, yes, okay, they have the extra draft pick. The hang up from what I understand is they don't want to send their pick to Golden State unprotected, meaning top 3, probably top 5. Golden State's like, look, if we're taking Wiggins back, then we want unprotected picks. We want the OKC bag, show me the money. Because here's where Minnesota has really went wrong is they've been too thirsty, right? Rule 1 in negotiations, you don't ever act like you're desperate. It gives the other person leverage. And that's kind of what Minnesota's done. And so I think you're seeing Golden State and Bob Myers kind of pray and wait on that, right? And so I don't know, Wiggins, people think of him as a negative. I think at the very least, he's Harrison Barnes in our system, right? Like he can catch on the weak side. He's very athletic. The hope would be you put him in a winning system, a new environment, and he can shine as the number 3 or 4 guy. The problem is that contract. Hence why the Warriors want a bag of draft picks. But the one variable that's been introduced into the mix is Malik Beasley. And I'm not going to talk much about what Denver did, because really what they did was they cut some salary. They acquired a first round pick, and because they knew they couldn't retain Malik Beasley. He's a restricted free agent. And so that's the key. Now Minnesota owns his bird rights, and they can retain him if they like him. He's a combo guard, very athletic, but not a point guard. He's not a playmaker. But is Golden State interested in Malik Beasley? Because you look at how Jordan Poole and Jacob Evans are playing and not exactly panning out. Now the jury's still out, right? There's still time, but it hasn't been great, right? So are they interested in a defensive third combo guard behind the Splash Brothers to go along with those draft picks? Is that going to be enough to incentivize them to actually pull the trigger here before the Thursday deadline? I don't know. I think that the Knicks storyline, again, it may be the Warriors just leaking out that, hey, someone else is interested and they're still trying to leverage those draft picks out of Minnesota. But on paper, if you look at the Knicks, I think they actually have a better offer on paper because of Mitchell Robinson. They've got a handful of young players, not many of them playing well. I assume RJ Barrett is probably the one that's off the table, but you got Knox, Ntilikina, Mitchell Robinson, Dennis Smith Jr., is he still in the league? I don't know. The key is, again, with the draft picks, who is willing to send unprotected draft picks to Golden State? But if we've learned anything from all these rumors with D'Lo and the Warriors, I think that the Warriors behind the scenes, Bob Myers, Joe Lacob, that they have decided that D'Angelo does not fit long term. I think that they've come to that conclusion, and that's why you're seeing them start to shop him earlier. Now, all we've heard all year long is, we want to see D'Angelo with Steph. We got to see him with Steph first before we make this decision. And I think, again, it's a leveraging tactic. I think they're on the phone with Minnesota, and they go, well, you know what? After we see D'Lo with Steph, we may not want to trade him. I mean, they may just fit so well together. So it's kind of not, do you want to get it done? Do you want to give us the picks or not? Because when Steph gets back, I think that's what's going on. Big picture, I think they've decided, all right, he's not part of the plan. And that's at least the very least we can draw from all these rumors right now. But again, Minnesota is misplaying their hand. They're too thirsty. And so we'll see what happens. I don't know if the D'Lo thing goes down. Obviously, I don't. Just like y'all don't. All these rumors. But I do think there are going to be some moves amongst the contenders. The 2 LA teams, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Boston. I think there's going to be some moves. So if you haven't already, definitely hit the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, because I will hit you with all the takes as they roll in here in the next 24, 48 hours of this NBA trade deadline. I've been winning so long, it's like alchemy.